Sarah Beasley, a writer. I'm sometimes called Sarah Kunzang Lamo, which is my Tibetan refuge name. I don't use it very often, so when I do, I'm really speaking from my tender heart to you. And I am so joyful that today is actually Guru Day. It is also the birthday of my precious Root Lama, who has left his precious body but continues to dwell. And I am living right now on the unceded territories of the Ute, Arapaho, and Cheyenne peoples in Colorado. And I was born in Massachusetts, which is already an indigenous name, the lands of the Wampanoag, Narragansett, and Mohican peoples, among many others. So I wanted to acknowledge those origins of where I have been blessed and privileged to be born and to reside, and all the many blessings that my ancestors have received from the longer term ancestors of these lands, so precious. I am a student of the Dujum Tersar school of the Nyingma Vajrayana lineage, and I have sometimes been an artist and an art teacher. And at other times, I've worked with preschool and graduate students and Dharma students from many countries. I love to be at the ocean, and I love to be in the mountains and anywhere I can get my feet and hands dirty and be with the animals up close. So a little bit about me. I'm very honored to be invited to this conference and to lend my voice to the very important conversation around climate crisis. So the teachings, the great Tibetan Vajrayana Buddhist teachings about the elements and the Buddha families, many of us have heard and read and learned about these. It's quite a large area of teaching. So from the 5 wisdoms, the 5 Buddha families, 5 dakinis, and then we get kind of closer and closer into the inner worlds of afflictive emotions and antidotes to emotions, and then the subtler energies of even kind of deeper into our being. So in addition to being a Dharma instructor, I did spend 2 3-year retreats in the forest with a small group of practitioners and my teacher. And so kind of going deeply into these Dharma teachings as well as into the physical embodied experiences of living in the mountain with the creatures and the landscapes and the waters and the weathers, and weathers, of course, inward and outward weathers and the climate. So it seems like a very lofty topic, and it's, of course, too broad for a short video. But what I wanted to touch on is this idea of nuche. Nuche in Tibetan is the outer container and its inhabitants, or you could say the earth and all her creatures, or a landscape and everything that pertains to it. So that is the insects and the animals and the human animals and the plants and trees and rocks and the movable forces of water and wind and fire and earth. So wanting to just touch briefly a little bit today in a few different ways about how these outer elements of our world, and of course our world in crisis, relate to our inner landscape of our thoughts, feelings, emotions, and sensations. My mind is my most precious resource. It is the one thing I can cultivate, the one thing I can truly realize even a little bit of. And that is completely interwoven with the earth's natural resources of wood and water and stone and soil and creatures and all of the things that we objectify as resources that we need or that are being depleted. But these are not separate experiences. It's just that we categorize them into which is more important and, who gets what, and even me saying we, right? So who's this we that's deciding what's more important or who gets what first? Everyone is perceiving that then we're not different and we're not separate. But our perception of difference and our perception of separate, whether that is, racial or geographical or the many ways we are separate and different, that is the climate crisis, the social and emotional and cultural climate crisis. Those climates are in crisis as much as our physical climates are in crisis. And they interweave in the sense of climate justice and injustice, where certain peoples and certain places are receiving the brunt of tangible physical climate crises and collapse and events, adverse events are disproportionately being experienced by some peoples and not really others. So it's complicated, but I think that the 4-dimensional mandala or 5-dimensional mandala of this social, emotional, mental, meditational, and tangible physical crises are interwoven and must be kind of addressed that way. And that's why I go back and back and back again to this, are my feet on the ground? Okay, they're on the ground enough that I can then be of service. Because it is that kind of, not just peace begins with me, but activism begins with me, and offering begins with me, but only with these toes deeply embedded in the dark soil and in the water and in the leaves where they belong. Again, so it's just that tapping into that long-term ultimate level resource that we have means that we can then use discerning wisdom and wisdom of clarity and all those wisdoms that go back to the 5 families and elements and all of that. We can kind of pick from our toolbox and say, okay, which of these tools and methods can I apply right now to plastic in the oceans, or people at risk from hurricanes and flooding and losing their homes and livelihoods and lives, and getting creative, getting curious about how to apply this affectionate heart, this tukje, compassionate, noble heart, literally noble heart, to be of service to our Mother Earth and all her creatures and people. And the arts really figure into everything we do in terms of where's meaning come from? What makes life worth living? And what also can so beautifully describe and embody the essence of the earth and her sufferings. And for me, that is poetry, that is painting, that is movement, that is theater, and these things are not rigid. So like there's theater in the streets, right? That can kind of be a part of demonstrating or marching. There's graffiti art. And so there's like painting on walls, on buildings, there's dancing on skyscrapers. There's kind of this total intermingling of what we consider, the fine arts or creativity with the inanimate world and the animate world. So I have a degree as an artist. I did art for many years. And part of the reason I did was that I had a teacher who I refer to as the first bodhisattva in my life. He really taught us how to draw out our own affection for life and to see that in visual form, whether 3D sculpture or painting or drawing. And so he really changed my mind around the importance, the essential nature of the arts. And if you go back to Greek and Roman times and ancient times, all over, people are enacting and reenacting and dramatizing and demonstrating through materials kind of their inner experience, their dream life, their wishes, wants, hopes. So I think without the arts, we wouldn't even really be a species the way we are. We look again and again to Longchenpa, particularly his teaching on the wildwood, as the wildwood is always dear and close to my heart, no matter what city I may be in. Longchenpa says, do not affirm or reject anything. Give up attempting to engineer experience. By living in this way, anything that happens will help reveal the unborn and unceasing nature of mind, your innate nature, just as it is. And so this for me is kind of the context for eco-dharma, engaged activism, is being really sure that before we jump in, kind of ready to go, a little bit ahead of ourselves, we go back to this innate, unborn, true, genuine heart of our nature, and that it is inseparable with Mother Nature. And then already we're so resourced, we're so grounded, and maybe a little tremulous. That's okay. The human heart is tremulous. Then we're ready to take that step and look around and ask, what can I do to help? And it can change every single day, every hour, every minute. But these two, really grounded and then engaged, both are needed now, and we don't have time to waste. So may your practice be filled with nourishment. Interested, I've been writing a lot about regenerative farming, so very specific writing about what is working, what is not working with soil and microbes and water and plants. And I'm very interested in actually going to start living in a, farm community where I can actually get my hands in there and learn how to do this. Because I'm so inspired by people taking these vast tracts of desertified land and turning it back into green. Takes some time, but it's working. So for me, this connection between mind and natural resource, and why I'm drawing that, is that I'm finding that after a lot of meditation and practice and a formal study and all of that, and then period of time where I thought that was kind of one part of my life, and then this other part was like writing about activism or being involved in activism or involved with the soil conference, or like the nitty gritty of the creatures and the people. I kind of conceived of these as two different things that might overlap a little. And now I'm seeing that they're not at all separate, that it is actually our mind's true nature, which has this tremulous heart wishing for, kind of wishing for others or wishing for belonging or reconnection. And not in like a, this is who I am emotional way, but in a really vast way that I think, if I remember back to before when I was not in a body yet, I would imagine through my dream life that I was not feeling so separate as I feel now in this human body and in this kind of personality place, that I often feel lonely or separate. And then I read all of these amazing wisdom teachers and writers and poets, and I see the art that's coming out, and I think, I feel, oh, I've never been separate. And this is what the Buddha Dharma teaches, is that our mind has never been a thing over here. It is everything. So Buddha nature and my true mind is in that stone. That stone is my true nature. And that butterfly and that begonia and that man that I fear and don't like, never been separate. But my perception is challenged. And so if mind is my biggest resource, it's all I'm ever going to end up with potentially, and it's everything. Because the body is just this, I have to read you just this one line from Charlotte Duquesne, an incredible writer. She's talking about the meaning that I mentioned before. She says, what brings meaning are the ones who have gone before, the primordial beings that form the bones and breath of the earth, its rocks and rivers and sky. Our rocks, your bones, our sky, your mind, our trees, your feet, our water, your blood. And I would add, our breezes, your breath. And it's that holy breath that infuses us now in this incarnation, which is temporary. So that breath came from somewhere and it will dissipate and disappear. But the mind keeps weaving. So that makes it our most precious resource that we will ever have. And it won't even be the we or the I or this me that will have it, but it will keep being had in this great tapestry. And in this place, in this tapestry, in this part of the earth's incarnation, we're seeing and feeling that the earth needs help, needs us to do better and to give back and to replenish and rejuvenate. And so we kind of need to do that at the same time that we do it for our own body. There's no waiting. There's no like who's more important. There's like everybody all at once together. That's the kind of time we're working with. In the timeless time, time is of the essence as well.